अरे बबलू, लॉकडाउन खुलते ही टहलने निकल पड़े। महामारी अभी फैली हुई है।
सरपंच जी टहलने नहीं, काम पे वापस जा रहे हैं।
तुझे डर नहीं लगता वायरस पकड़ लेगा?
पहले थोड़ा बहुत डर लगता था, फिर पता चला कि अगर मैंने पूरी सावधानी बरती तो ये बीमारी होने की संभावना कम है। सबसे महत्वपूर्ण है ये मास्क। काम पर मास्क हमेशा पहनूंगा, समय समय पर हाथ धोता रहूंगा और दूसरों से हर वक्त कम से कम 2 गज की दूरी बनाए रखूंगा। खुद को, दूसरों को और अपने परिवार वालों को भी सुरक्षित रखूंगा।
अरे भाई, मेरी जिम्मेदारी बनती है तुझे चेतावनी देना, सो दे दिया।
जब देश के मेडिकल और स्वच्छता कर्मचारी रोज कोरोना वायरस से लड़ने का काम कर रहे हैं तो हमारी भी तो जिम्मेदारी बनती है अपना काम करने की।
बबलू, तुझे कुछ हो गया तो?
हजारों लोग इस बीमारी को हराकर ठीक हो चुके हैं और अगर किसी कारण मुझे ये बीमारी हो भी जाए तो सरकार ने अस्पताल में हमारे इलाज के लिए पर्याप्त व्यवस्था कर रखी है। ये घबराने का वक्त नहीं, एक दूसरे का हौसला बढ़ाने का वक्त है।
अरे ऐसे क्या देख रहा है? तू काम पे जाएगा, मैं नहीं जाऊंगा, नाक नहीं कट जाएगी मेरी। चलो।
मास्क।
हाँ, मास्क मास्क।
अरे नाक तो ढक लो।
हाँ।
कोरोना वायरस से हमें लड़ाई जारी रखनी पड़ेगी, पर उससे डर कर नहीं, पूरी सावधानी के साथ डट कर चलिए। रुकी जिंदगी को आगे बढ़ाएं, देश को आत्मनिर्भर बनाएं। जय हिंद।
Namaskar. Are we seeing a global realignment in the wake of many recent Chinese actions and positions on global issues? The US has been mounting pressure on China. It has said that Huawei and ZTE are national security threats. The US has blamed China for COVID and the impact it has had on the world. It has also said that the position that China takes in the South China Sea is completely unlawful and that Beijing is treating the South China Sea as its maritime empire. So are we seeing a realignment that is aimed at thwarting any expansionist agenda that China might have? So that's going to be in focus tonight, and let's begin with the headlines. The Indian Army asserts that both India and China are committed to the objective of complete disengagement along the LAC. The statement comes after the Army commanders meet at Chushul on the Indian side on July 14th. Pakistan fails to provide unhindered and unconditional consular access to Kulbhushan Jadhav. India strongly protests and condemns the construction of the Diamar Bhasha Dam by Pakistan in illegally occupied Indian territory. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, along with the Army Chief, will visit the forward areas of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh from Friday. The Defence Acquisition Council delegates powers for urgent capital acquisition up to 300 crore rupees to the armed forces to meet operational requirements. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to deliver the keynote address virtually at the high-level segment of the United Nations Economic and Social Council meeting and session tomorrow on Friday. And the session is to focus on multilateralism after COVID-19, which resonates with India's Security Council priority of reformed multilateralism. India's massive evacuation mission, Vande Bharat, has brought back around 6.9 lakh stranded Indians. Civil Aviation Minister asserts negotiations for air bubble with France, US and Germany are in an advanced stage. Air France to operate 28 flights from Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru to Paris from the 18th of July to the 1st of August. COVID recovery rate continues to improve across India and rises to over 63% with over 6.1 lakh recoveries. Active cases stand at 3.3 lakhs with nearly 25,000 fatalities. Bihar goes under complete lockdown till the 31st of July while Bengaluru announces 7-day lockdown. Flood and landslide situation continues to remain grim with over 92 people dead in Assam. The Chief Minister takes stock at Kaziranga to assess the damage caused by the floods. The IMD forecasts intense rainfall over parts of Gujarat, Maharashtra and Goa. In international news, the US Congress has urged, members of the US Congress have urged President Donald Trump to follow India's lead and ban TikTok and other Chinese apps, expressing concern over national security. 25 Congress members urge taking strong action to stop the Chinese Communist Party's sophisticated espionage campaign. And in sports, FIFA announces the schedule for the 2020 World Cup in Qatar. 4 games to be played daily in the group stage from the 21st of November onwards. The final will be played on the 18th of December. So let's begin with our top story. Now, after India had banned TikTok and 59 other Chinese apps, several US congressmen have written to the US President Donald Trump to impose a similar ban in the US. The US House Committee on Appropriations has also passed a number of provisions to crack down on foreign entities or state-owned enterprises that steal data and personal information of US citizens. Let's look at this report.
The move to ban TikTok in the US has suddenly gained momentum after India's decision in this regard last month. A group of 24 influential Republican congressmen have urged US President Donald Trump to ban TikTok and other Chinese mobile applications over security concerns. They wrote a letter to Trump to support the administration's efforts to restrict TikTok and other social media platforms linked to the Chinese Communist Party from accessing US markets. They alleged these popular apps' data collection practices present a very real threat to US national security. They cited China's onerous cybersecurity laws, requiring all companies operating in China, including TikTok's parent company ByteDance, to share user data with CCP authorities. They also urged him to take strong action to stop the CCP's sophisticated espionage campaign against US. The White House indicated on Wednesday that a decision on Chinese mobile applications, including TikTok, could be taken within weeks and not months. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows told reporters, "I do not think there is any self-imposed deadline for action, but I think we are looking at weeks, not months. There are a number of administration officials who are looking at the national security risk as it relates to TikTok, WeChat and other apps that have the potential for national security exposure, specifically as it relates to the gathering of information on American citizens by a foreign advisory." Early this month, Pompeo had said the US may ban TikTok. China is also engaged in disputes over the South China Sea with many nations in the area, including Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia. Australia has also said that it will continue to advocate very strongly for the freedom of navigation through the South China Sea.
Australia will continue to adopt a very supportive position of freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. We back that up with our own actions and our own initiatives and our own statements, but we'll say it the Australian way, we'll say it the way that's in our interest to make those statements, and we'll continue to adopt a very consistent position. It is a matter that is frequently raised when we have dialogue with our colleagues.
India has also made it clear that it supports freedom of navigation along the South China Sea routes.
South China Sea is a part of global commons, and India has an abiding interest in peace and stability in the region. We firmly stand for the freedom of navigation and overflight and unimpeded lawful commerce in these international waterways in accordance with international law, notably UNCLOS. India also believes that any differences be resolved peacefully by respecting the legal and diplomatic processes and without resorting to threat or use of force.
The US House Committee on Appropriations has passed a number of provisions to crack down on foreign entities and state-owned enterprises that seek to steal data and personal information from American citizens. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, global tech giants are investing in India with an aim to strengthen digital infrastructure and to manufacture affordable tech and 5G solutions. On the other side, many countries have begun to shun Huawei technology, and also the US has threatened to impose visa restrictions on Chinese companies like Huawei Technologies. So the UK too has banned Huawei from its 5G telecom network. And does this mean that the secured made in India 5G solution could end China's global 5G ambitions? Let's look at this report. As India is moving ahead to launch 5G services, the government has ensured that ahead of the rollout, a robust digital infrastructure is in place. Various global companies are investing in the lucrative IT market of India. With an Indian telecom player's announcement that it's all set to roll out the first Atmanirbhar, or completely indigenous 5G network, the nation moves another step closer to realizing Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call for a self-reliant, self-sustaining digital India. Speaking at the Google India event that saw an investment of $10 billion being promised to India by the tech giant, IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad reiterated India's commitment to bridging the digital divide and creating a truly inclusive society.
Why India is important in the present world? A stable democracy, an open society, and seeking to transform the life of ordinary Indians to the power of technology. That is what Digital India is about. And therefore, this digital transformation, emphasizing upon digital inclusion, bridging the digital divide, and allowing more and more innovation, is a part of that process.
The development comes as Huawei and ZTE are under the scanner in many countries, including India, for potential data privacy and security issues in their 5G equipment for mobile networks. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has said that the United States would impose visa restrictions on Chinese companies like Huawei Technologies, which he accused of facilitating human rights violations.
State Department will impose visa restrictions on certain employees of Chinese technology companies like Huawei that provide material support to regimes engaging in human rights violations and abuses globally.
The U.S. Federal Communication Commission has declared Chinese telecom giants Huawei and ZTE as national security threats. The move will ban U.S. telecom companies from using federal funds to buy and install Huawei and ZTE equipment. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom has banned Huawei from its 5G telecom network. UK has decided to ban the purchase of 5G components from the end of this year and to order the removal of all existing Huawei gear from the 5G network by 2027.
The government agrees with the National Cybersecurity Centre's advice. The best way to secure our networks is for operators to stop using new affected Huawei equipment to build the UK's future 5G networks. So to be clear, from the end of this year, telecoms operators must not buy any 5G equipment from Huawei. And once the Telecom Security Bill is passed, it will be illegal for them to do so.
New Zealand and Canada have also left Huawei out of their 5G plans. France has ruled out a total ban but reportedly urged 5G telecom operators to avoid using Huawei equipment. Recently, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo praised Reliance Jio as a clean network while being critical of Huawei's 5G equipment. So will India's upcoming Made in India 5G solution end Huawei's global 5G ambitions? This is something that only time will tell. Arun Sharma's report for DD News. So that brings us to In Focus tonight, and In Focus is Chinese companies under the global scanner. Chinese companies under global scanner. To discuss this, we have Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti. Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti is the former secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs on Economic Relations, and Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador of India. Professor Harsh Vardhan Pant is Distinguished Fellow at ORF. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. We'll start with you, Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti. So what do you make of all this? Many countries now describing Huawei Technologies as a national security threat. US, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, restrictions being imposed by Europe. The basic concern, of course, is access of data going to the Chinese Communist Party. How serious is this as a global threat?
I think it's the coming of age in terms of recognizing the digital world, in terms of how the digital world sucks up data from different countries and how data is used for their own national goals. And I think it was high time, it was bound to happen. The Americans had sort of convinced themselves that in the past, that is, that once China becomes integrated or they help China integrate into the global sort of economic, WTO, and other kind of value chains, etc., which China, of course, used, and American companies profited from it, and made China into what it is today.
Yes.
Now they are realizing that once they have created this Frankenstein, that China is not a normal player on the global stage. It has gone rogue in many ways,
Okay.
and it is basically trying to oust the U.S. from its position as a global sort of player, and sort of overturn the international liberal order that
Yes.
it does not see that it has taken advantage of it, but now it wants to replace the USA as the big dada or the hegemon of the world. So I think that is what is happening.
Okay,
And countries
indeed.
have now suddenly realized that this cannot be allowed to happen.
Indeed. Let's bring in Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. Do you see a realignment that's taking place then against Chinese aggression? Is this an emergence of a new world order, would you say?
I don't know whether the new world order will emerge, but one thing is very certain: the geopolitical order that we know today is permanently fractured. There is going to be a realignment. How things will pan out is anybody's guess, but it cannot be business as usual. Look at the irony. Look at the irony. Before I talk of China a bit, let me comment on Huawei.
Yes.
Huawei must be laughing their way back to the bank. Can you imagine 160, 70 odd countries paying Huawei top dollars to spy on themselves? I mean, if we have all been living in some kind of a denial, that is one example. Here it is this company, state-owned enterprise, which is a veritable arm of PLA, which is spying on us, which has the capability of planting bugs, trojans, bringing systems down. And merely because of economic interests and because of competitive pricing, we all have been just doing their bidding.
Okay.
So one, I think that certainly geo, but more than geo, if the democratic countries come together and pool their technologies, resources, capabilities, we can do a much better job. Secondly, China has done an exceptionally competent job in offending everybody.
Yes.
Everybody. And they have, with expansionism, with muscle flexing, with intimidation, you look around in the neighborhood of China, and there will be rarely a country which has decent relations with China. Japan, Australia, Canada, USA.
Yes, indeed.
You know, so, and I can go on. So obviously a stage has come when countries are saying enough is enough. You cannot bully any and everybody. And US has finally woken up to the challenge. And I think it's a matter of time where things will begin to change. They are already changing, and a realignment of forces, of relationships will happen.
Okay. Professor Harshvardhan Pant, India believes in a rules-based world order. Also, India is in the process of some dialogue with China on restoring status quo ante in eastern Ladakh. India has banned several 59, 60 apps of Chinese apps. So how does all this affect India's India's role in the global state of play?
I think the larger global order that is emerging, it seems are juxtaposing India and China on the same world order, and clearly you see how Ambassador Chakrabarti described China very rightly. I think as a roguish state. It is not a state that wants to be part of the global order. It is ripping up every single treaty, every single international norm, every single international institution that it is part of today. And it is trying to create a world in its own image. I think in the image of the Communist Party of China, the way it runs China, it wants to run the world. And I think that is precisely the problem that we face today. How do you reconcile? How does international community reconcile to a rising power that has absolutely no stake in the existing order? So clearly, I think the question, therefore, for the world is to look at this without any compromise, without any rose-tinted glasses, and to come to terms with that. And I think that is what is happening. All the discussions that are happening around the world today is to how do you accommodate such a power. And when you look at India with all its internal problems, with all its institutional frailties, comes across as a country that has that has a stake in the global order, that has, as you pointed out, wants to make this world and the region a rules-based order where rules matter, where norms matter, where institutions matter. So therefore, multilateralism is important. Therefore, rules are important and norms are important for India. And when you juxtapose India's engagement with the world with China's engagement with the world today, you find that there is no comparison, that India comes across as a country that is reasonable, that wants to accommodate itself as a rising power in an international order with which it may have differences, but it does not want to overturn the existing order. Whereas China, it seems, wants to just kick it aside, lock, stock, and barrel, and there is no alternative vision in sight. So I think, therefore, a lot of reordering that you are witnessing today in the world is a reflection of this reality, and hopefully it will gather momentum, because I think, as Ambassador Prakash pointed out, enough is enough, and most countries have realized that enough is enough.
So indeed, enough is enough. Ambassador Chakrabarti, countries have also demanded an investigation into the origin of COVID, and that's an investigation that is going to take place. So what do you think? I mean, how do you see that? That also casts a certain shadow on China, and the fact that the whole world has now been affected by this pandemic, and we all know that it originated in China, and now we need to investigate how it originated in the first place.
There are two aspects here. One is that countries like Australia and others who spoke up on this investigation have felt the sort of the reaction of the Chinese. In the World Health Assembly, it was unanimously decided that there shall be an investigation.
Yes.
Because the world wants to know how it happened in Wuhan and why did it spread. Why didn't the Chinese, who are so, adept at clamping down, and after all, it's an authoritarian dictatorship of the party, the Communist Party, how could they allow the Wuhan virus? From Wuhan, apparently the flights went all over the world, and that's how it spread. Was it deliberate? I mean, people are asking all these questions. So I think we need to investigate. The second point about China is that it has taken advantage of the fact that the world is engaged in fighting the COVID pandemic to save the people. Save every country. It wants to save its people, like us. And today, what is happening is that China is taking advantage of the fact that the countries have been diverted to this major pandemic, and it's doing all kinds of things on its periphery. It is attacking India in Ladakh. It is attacking all the countries in South China Sea. It has changed the laws on Hong Kong and made it as if it's now Hong Kong is no longer what it used to be. It has a unique status. It is threatening Taiwan, and the world is basically pushing back now. Enough is enough, is what Ambassador, my colleague, said. And I think Harsh also mentioned that the Rubicon has been crossed. And I think that is the point that we are seeing today, that the world is now realizing that China is not a country that wants to live in peace.
Okay, and Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, so the support that the world seems to be giving Taiwan, for instance, to join as a member of the WHO, that also is some sort of an aspect of trying to put pressure on China from all kinds of sides. And we've seen also that the US and Japan are economically distancing themselves from China. They're pulling out their companies from China. How is this all going to impact China over the medium term?
I think the impact will be severe for a variety of reasons. One, the Chinese leadership, which lives virtually in a bubble, and when you're an authoritarian leader and you learn to shoot the messenger, then you only get to hear what you want to hear. So they have appear to be surprised that there has been this kind of a pushback, which I think they did not expect. Secondly, the reaction of the world to South China Sea and to Taiwan is something that again has jolted and will jolt the Chinese government. I think the fact that they have overplayed their hand, the way they have opened up too many fronts, is going to come and haunt them. Now, as far as the economic aspect is concerned, we all know that there is a social compact between the Chinese CPC and the people. The unwritten compact is that the people should leave politics to the party, and party will give them economic prosperity. Now, with the decoupling happening and going to gain steam with the dream of technological dominance perhaps getting thwarted, there is going to be a massive downside to the Chinese economy, and that will bring a whole set of consequences. Because as it is from a double-digit growth rate, they are down to low single digits, and that will further come down. And the fact is that the world has allowed China to become the world's factory, and the world which had allowed China to become the world factory can also undo it. And when the decoupling begins, onshoring begins and gains steam, it's only not a question of if, it's a question of when.
So, Professor Harshpant, so it's a question of when, because it already actually was beginning to, it had started earlier. People were already moving out of China. Companies were reshoring in a sense because costs were going up also in China, and they needed to, diversify in a sense. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. So now what do you see? I mean, do you see this accelerating at a certain pace?
Yes, I think some of the trends that we were witnessing before the advent of COVID-19, all those trends have been accentuated by Chinese behavior in the initial stages of COVID-19, with the mismanagement, and Chinese behavior on the geopolitical side since over the last 3 to 4 months. And I think if you combine them both, you look at a world order that is in tremendous flux. You look at a world order which where countries are willing to stand up to China increasingly, even those countries who were in doubt. So you can go back a few months, and then see how UK's decision, Huawei, was a different one. They decided to give it the partial access. Today they have said, no, it can't, it is not possible. So clearly those countries who were willing to engage with China, even though it was limited engagement, even those countries are having a rethink on their policies. So clearly we are looking at a larger framework where China is under pressure. And my belief is that Chinese behavior today has less to do with Chinese strength and more to do with Chinese vulnerabilities. And those vulnerabilities domestically are being reflected in the way China is, just Chinese leadership. Communist Party is just flailing around, creating crises where none exist, trying to browbeat smaller neighbors. So clearly there is tension within the Chinese Communist Party. There are tensions within China, which are being reflected in the way Chinese foreign policy is being shaped up. And that will have consequences for the communist leadership. But alas, it will also have some short-term consequences for the world order because of whatever we are witnessing today. So I think we are moving into a phase where Chinese pressure and global pushback both are going to be very, 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 very substantial.
Let's bring in Ambassador Chakrabarti once again. So under the current tensions then, could the South China Sea become a flashpoint? Because we know that there are military assets of the United States and China in the sea, in the South China Sea area currently.
Well, one can never rule out a flashpoint in the sense that since such large assets of the US are there, and China obviously must be feeling the heat, it all depends on who does what. I think the US can play a waiting game, leave its the two sort of aircraft carriers and the accompanying fleet there and keep a watch on what China does. If China fires the first shot, then I think there will be conflict. And China will suffer so badly that it will regret what the kind of actions that he has taken. But I think I don't know whether any provocation will come from the American side. But I think the provocation may come from the Chinese side, as it has come in Ladakh, for example, against us, or in Hong Kong, for example. So I think we are looking at the Communist Party of China, which is behaving in a very abnormal manner. Because you see, ultimately the outcome of all this is the question, what is China gaining? Is it gaining something? Is it gaining in terms of its national interest by sort of consolidating all those who are now pushing back at China? I don't understand the Chinese philosophy or its thinking. Either it's coming, as Harsh rightly said, from a struggle within the Communist Party. Otherwise, I don't see any rational behavior in all this. I mean, unless China thinks that
It doesn't
has
seem to
been
be
so
rational at all,
strong,
yes.
it has become so strong that nobody can challenge it anymore, and it can do anything it wants. So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think China believes that, but because I'm sure there are many cool heads in China who realize that they cannot take on the Americans.
Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, so I mean, whether the cooler heads will prevail or not is a question, but what about the viability of the Quad to counter Chinese aggression and ambitions at this time? Because I mean, the countries involved are Japan, India, Australia, and the US.
Well, again, I think I will send a thank you note to President Xi Jinping to enable the countries to drop their hesitation. Many countries were hesitant. Quad had taken baby steps, but the way China has behaved, I think countries have realized that there is no choice but to take China on and push back. China is a bully which can only be stared down, and the more you accommodate it. So Quad, I think, will become increasingly important. Already it has been, the dialogue level has been raised to the level of foreign ministers. There is talk of Quad Plus, countries like South Korea, New Zealand, Vietnam, Indonesia, possibly France, Brazil are being also spoken of. I am not sure whether it is time to expand Quad, but Quad is going to, because these are 4 democratic countries, important countries, and these 4 countries, especially Australia and India, are now being spoken of in practically every grouping, whether we are talking of G11 or G10 or D10. So I guess Quad will come of age, and the role of Quad has to be defined now, agenda has to be defined now, and there will be no choice left but to also include security as one of the important items of the agenda, because we have reached a stage where you cannot allow the prevalent security architecture to be disrupted in the way China is seeking to disrupt it.
Okay, final question from